Hey everybody, Justin Pittman here again from Precision Fly and Tackle, and I'm excited to say that we're here tonight with Brian Shoemaker from Susquehanna River Guides Services. Not only is Brian, in my opinion, one of the best guides in the state for smallmouth bass, but a dear friend, and we can't thank Brian enough for being here tonight. Over the next couple months, Precision Fly and Tackle is looking to bring in different guides and celebrities to talk to them about what they do and how they do it so well, and for all of us to learn from them. So we're going to start out asking Brian a few questions, and these questions are going to address both our veteran anglers and some of our beginner anglers. And we're going to elaborate on those questions throughout the night. And if you have questions later, you'll be able to reach out to us. So our first question for Brian. Brian, can you talk to me a little bit about a day on the water with you and what to expect if someone books a guide trip with you?
Well, a day on the water, we offer two different trips. We have full days and we also have half days. So we'll start with the full days. I pretty much let the client pick the start time. So we're pretty flexible that way. We can either start early, start in the middle, or we can start late depending on the time factor. And a full day is run float trips on the river. It's fishing out of a drift boat. So in I'm going to say the meat of our season, which is summertime, late June, July, August, September into October. So what you can expect is during that time frame, we're going to fish a mix of both topwater and streamers. So you get some popper action on top, and then we can go underneath when it gets a little warmer in the day and fish streamers. Our full days are anywhere from 8 to 9 hours on the water, depending on what float that we do. I have between the Susquehanna and Juniata, I have about 15 different floats. So, and I rotate them. I usually try not to fish the same section of the river 2 days in a row. Some days it does happen, but most days I try to just rotate through. You also have a choice of, because I run both rivers, that we can fish either the Susquehanna or Juniata, or you can leave it up to me and I'll take you to whatever's fishing best. So, but if you specifically were interested in fishing big water, which would be the Susquehanna, we can definitely do that. Or if you want, a little more intimate water, we can fish the Juniata. Or you can leave it up to me and I'll put you on the best stretch that's fishing the best. And I also have setups available if you're new to this. If you're coming from either a conventional background, new to fly fishing, or you're coming from a trout background, I have the rods, the reels, lines. I definitely have the flies. So I provide all of that. It's all included in the package. So, and what I want folks to get out of this is, I want to make it the most enjoyable day that I can for you, but I want it to be a learning experience. Mm-hmm. So what I usually tell folks first thing before they get in the boat with me is, I don't know what you don't know. So you have me as a captive audience for the time that we're on the water. Pick my brain, ask questions. I'm here to help you, to make you a better angler, and we're also want to catch fish, of course. But I want to give you the best experience that I can, and hopefully you feel at the end of the day that you've learned something.
Well, and Brian touched base on a good point. I'd like to bring it up. Brian has done that for me. One of the things, I'm a trout guy, and the bass on the fly has been new to me over the last couple of years. And my time on the water with Brian, the first couple times out, Brian has taught me how to cast efficiently at longer range than what I would normally or typically cast my traditional trout setups. And that kind of leads me into another question. Brian, one of the things that we talk about in the trout world and then transition to sometimes warm water and even salt water is, can you talk to me a little bit about the difference in fishing for trout and bass, and mostly the hook setup or the hook set?
The hook set. Sure. I mean, the big difference is there are similarities to trout, okay, and bass, but there's not a whole lot of them. They're two different species, and they act a lot different, sometimes the same. But the main difference is, one of the big differences is going to be the size of the rod and line that you're going to use. You know, most folks are using what I consider lighter gear for trout, from basically 5 weight down. Okay, when you're fishing smallmouth bass, there are places, if you get on some of the tributaries, that yes, you can fish a 6 weight. Okay, but my ideal setup is, of course, a 7 weight, but 7 or 8 weight is what I would recommend to get into smallmouth bass fishing. And it can also, that all 7 or 8 weight can also translate to, if you have access to largemouth bass too, that you can use that same setup. Okay, and the other thing that's going to differ not only in size is going to be the lines. Okay, the majority of your trout fishing, unless you're a streamer guy and like to chuck streamers, you're going to fish a floating line.
Correct.
Right? In my world, the smallmouth world, there's 3 lines that you're going to fish and you should learn to fish. Number 1 is going to be the floater. Number 2 is going to be an intermediate sinking line, and number 3 is going to be like a type 3 sinking line, which is heavier. So the floater, of course, you're going to fish your top water with. Okay, and you could, if you're on a tight budget, you could get away with fishing a floater all season long. Okay. But you're going to be limited to what you can do with that floating line and a weighted fly. And by that, and I'll go over it real quick, and I'm going to use my hands because I don't have anything to draw with. So you take a floating line, which is going to ride up on the surface. Then you have a 9-foot leader, okay? So that's coming off the end. And then you put a weighted fly, like a Clouser minnow or a clawhead, which is weighted, okay? So now you got your line and your leader sitting up here. But that end of that leader where that fly is attached falls here. The minute you start your retrieve, that fly comes up out of the zone because you have a floating line, floating leader, and it just pulls it, okay? You go to the intermediate, which is my bread and butter line for the majority of the smallmouth season, unless we have the higher flows and heavier water. So now you've got an intermediate, which sinks 1.5 to 2 inches per second. Your leader, which is going to be just straight tippet, I usually use fluorocarbon. So now that all sinks, and you take a weighted fly, so now it all goes down. And you can count it down to the depth you want to fish. And when you start retrieving that fly stays in the zone longer. Of course, when it all gets shortened up, it will ride up. Okay. And then the third line will be a type 3, which you're going to use if you got higher flows, heavier current, or something like that, if you need to get your fly down. So there's another difference. Trout, you're using predominantly a floating line. Unless you're a dedicated streamer guy, then you get into some of those sinking lines like I use. Okay. So we covered the rod, the line, and then the other big difference is the size of the flies that we're throwing.
Correct.
Basically,
wind resistant.
They're wind resistant. They're big. When you're bass fishing, you want to throw them in groceries. You don't want to give them a little insect imitation dry fly and give them a snack. You want to give them the groceries. So our flies are bigger. So
now, you said something there, Brian, talking about trout. One of the things that we see here in the fly shop at both stores is we're seeing fluorocarbon flies out the door for a lot of our trout fishermen, especially 5X, 6X, and even we're seeing a lot more 7X stuff going out the door. Do you find that the bass are as leader shy sometimes, or as sometimes we deal with in the trout world? Because you said there you're fishing some fluorocarbon.
Right. For the most part, the bass aren't leader shy.
Okay.
Until we get into a certain set of circumstances, in late summer where we'll have low, clear water.
Okay.
Okay? Then, yes, they can.
Okay.
Because the problem with low, clear water is if you can see out past the boat 50 feet, those bass are at 51 feet. Okay? So at times they can be very, very skittish. You know, you shuffle your feet in the boat, I bang the oar accidentally on the boat, and all of a sudden you'll say, "Oh my, there goes a big bass," and he just scoots out.
Okay.
So there are instances when yes they can become leader sensitive, but for the most part they're not. So we use heavier leaders and stuff. But the reason I like to use fluorocarbon is because it sinks.
Okay.
So I
It's
have,
getting down faster.
I have a sinking line, and I'd rather have a sinking, not so much a leader, because I run straight tippet off the end of my sinking line, 4 to 5 feet. It's not tapered; it's just straight tippet.
Yep.
But now the whole rig, if you will sink.
Yep.
And plus the fly, if you're using a weighted fly.
Okay.
So it all goes, makes it uniform. The other thing that I didn't touch on, and I know you asked about, was the hook set.
Yes.
So, you know, a lot of guys, whether you're nymphing for trout, you know, you're high stick nymphing, or you're fishing dry flies, when a trout eats, your first reaction is just lift up on the rod.
Correct.
Okay? So when I'm fishing for bass, especially streamers, well, all of it, even topwater bugs, is I like to have the rod tip down, either touching the water or slightly in the water, but it's going to be close to the surface of the water. Okay? And I want pretty much a straight line from the end of my rod tip to that fly. So when a bass does strike, basically I don't want to lift up. All I want to do is pull back. And basically that's a strip strike. So when the bass eats, you pull back and strip strike him. And a lot of times that just sets the hook on him, you know, because he has the fly in his mouth. If you do what we call a trout set in the bass world, if you do a trout set and lift up, yes, you can catch fish that way, okay? But a lot of times what you do is impart slack. And a lot of times you'll pull that fly right out of that fish's mouth because you're coming up, now you have slack, and you come back, and you can't get any resistance to set that hook.
And I've done that many times.
I have a lot of folks who do that too. And I like to have fun with you, and I'll ride you a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've done that a ton of times.
So,
as everyone knows, this has been a crazy year. So a trout or guiding is opening back up in Pennsylvania here, effective May 1, which is this coming Friday. And one of the things we want to ask Brian, and this will be future conversations down the road, Brian. But Brian, talk to me a little bit about how you approach spring bass. We're coming into spring bass. Water temperatures are still a little bit on the colder side.
right.
Fish aren't as active as they would be in June or July, like you said. So how does Brian Shoemaker approach the spring bass season before it really turns hot?
Real simple, and I can elaborate on it. But real simple, it's low and slow. Okay? I'll give you a prime example. I was out today fishing for pre-spawn bass, and you're right, the water's cold. I mean, I waded a tributary today, and standing in my waders, you could feel it on your legs. The water temperature is definitely cold because we've had frost some mornings here in the last couple of weeks, and we've had freeze warnings. And real quick, 2 weeks ago, on an area I fished, I had 48-degree surface temperature. And then I came back a couple days later, and it only warmed up to 52. So for this time of year, late April, almost going into May, we should be up in the 60s as far as water temperature goes. So bass being cold-blooded with that, okay, so what happens in the bass's life cycle is they winter in holes over the winter.
Mhm.
Okay, they basically group up and they're in the deepest part of a river or stream wherever they reside, and that's where they spend the winter. And they don't expend a lot of energy. They still do eat, but they won't chase, and they might eat every couple days instead of every day.
Mhm.
Okay, so as the water starts warming up in the early part of the spring, the bass will start moving out of those wintering holes. So Mother Nature takes over, and their instinct is, okay, we have to reproduce. So they're starting to come out as the water temperature rises. They're coming out of the wintering holes. Okay, they've got to start eating because they haven't eaten all winter. But they don't have the stamina that they would come summertime. Okay.
Correct.
So what happens is those bass, as they come in, they're going to start eating. The water's starting to warm. So what you want to key in on are slack water areas out of the main current. They're not going to expend a lot of energy because they don't have the stamina yet built up. So what you want to look for is you want to look for what we call back eddies, which are eddies that form off of the main stream current, river current, wherever you're fishing. So that's the areas you want to key in. If you got big rocks or boulders you're fishing around and the river comes down and hits that and comes out around, that area right behind that boulder is like a micro eddy.
They're not using as much energy.
That's correct. So they'll basically hang in there. You know, something gets washed by, they can dart out and get it. Everything, the last couple of weeks, the way I've been fishing, it's almost like you're catching them on the swim.
Mhm.
So you'll 45 your cast out, and we're using single lines, of course, and you want it to get down, not right on the bottom, you get down close, and you're letting that fly swing, and once it straightens out, you know, it's just little twitch, and all of a sudden you feel resistance. I mean, it's not smacking it.
Mhm.
It's just like, it's just resistance. You know, they're not real aggressive yet.
Okay.
So, does that
That answers my question.
answer your
And
question?
one thing we're going to do for all the viewers out there, our customers and followers, you know, we're going to interview Brian throughout the year to kind of talk about some of the different approaches, both because our next approach, and one I think find to be the hardest approach, is that summer bass when we do experience a low water year, where water gets extremely low, extremely crystal clear. So that's the next episode that we'll talk to Brian about in the future, is how he's approaching that summer bass. That low, clear water, that drift in the Little Jet or the Juniata River and the Susquehanna, and how he's doing that. I can't emphasize enough and thank Brian enough for being here. Brian was our first interview. He was able to help us work through the bugs of everything. Brian's been in this industry for many years, and in my opinion is one of the top professionals out there. One thing I want to remind everybody, May 1st, we open back up for guiding here in Pennsylvania. And one of the things we pride ourselves on at Precision Fly and Tackle is we consider ourselves a top shop, but we also think that we got some of the best guides in the state. We have experienced guides. We have guides that have been doing this for years, some of the best guides in the industry, both from our trout and our bass market. May 5th, we'll have Brian Kessel here at the shop to interview Brian. Brian is a conventional bass guide, runs 90% of his trips on the Susquehanna River. Brian's sponsored by some of the biggest shops in the conventional tackle world, and we're looking forward to interviewing Brian as well on a different approach. How does that conventional bass angler approach the spring? What is some of the tricks and tactics that Brian is using? Very similar to some of the things that Brian Shoemaker is using from the fly side. We're going to interview Brian on some of his gear, talk to him about some of the baits that he's using early season and throughout the year. To follow that up, on May 15th, we'll have Mike Heck here at the shop. Mike Heck's going to be talking to us about some of his approaches to spring creeks, what he's utilizing throughout the year, some of the changes he's seen in his approach throughout the year, both Falling Springs, Big Spring, and the Latort, and how he's changed some of his guiding approach and just how things have changed. Brian's an author, wrote an excellent book, so we're going to talk to Brian about that and kind of grill him on some of the nitty-gritty. If you have questions, If you have questions for Brian Shoemaker, or if you have questions for any of the guides that we are bringing in or celebrities that we're bringing in over the next couple months, please email us your questions at marketing@precisionflyandtackle.com. If you would like to book a trip with Brian or any one of our guides here for Precision Fly and Tackle, please call us at the shop at 717-486-4646. Again, Brian books fast. If you're looking to book a trip with Brian on one of the rivers, please reach out to us. One of the things that Brian didn't mention, but Brian also runs a 2 Rivers, 2 Days program. We also have lodging available here at Precision Fly and Tackle in Mount Holly Springs. So we have lodging on site that we work with all of our guides, and we can work that into some of your packages. Again, any questions for us, please reach out to us at precisionflyandtackle.com. You can email us questions at marketing@precisionflyandtackle.com, or you can call us at the shop at 717-486-4646. If you like what you see, please like and share our videos, and thank you so much for following us.